So how do you let a woman know that you are a high value man? How do you get across and tell her about all your attractive qualities, all the reasons why she should be with you, why she should chase you, why she should choose you over all the other guys that are after her? What do you say to her? Well, the answer is you don't say anything. Show, don't tell. And in this video, I'm going to give you 5 ways to demonstrate that you are a high value guy, that you are an attractive guy without saying anything. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio. And one of the mistakes that I used to make personally, and a mistake that I see the clients that I'm working with make, is we kind of know after a while what women are attracted to. We know that a women want a guy who has a good social life, or they want a guy that other women want, right? Pre-selection. They want a guy that they think other girls want. We know that they want an adventurous guy. Maybe we hear that they want a dominant guy. They want a player or a bad boy. And a mistake that guys make, and like I said, I see my clients do this, but I can remember myself one time when I had come out of a relationship. My game was really rusty. I was kind of figuring some of this stuff out. And I remember I was at a party at a mutual friend's house, and I met this girl, Grace, and we kind of hit it off, and then our mutual friend sort of set us up. And I was very much in like the learning phase where I was just like, oh, and you'd hear all these things like, oh, I gotta show her that I'm a player, that I'm a bad boy, you know. So I'm talking to her, and I'm going overboard, telling her how I don't want anything serious. I just like to have fun, you know. I'm just bragging about my social life, and she wound up leaving that night, and I never heard from her again. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I kind of instinctively knew. I was like, maybe I overdid it. But what I didn't pick up on at that time was that the whole idea of demonstrating these qualities that women want, that women chase, is that you have to actually demonstrate them, right? Talk is cheap. A rich person doesn't walk around telling everybody he's rich or he looks like a douchebag. A confident guy doesn't have to tell everybody, hey, I'm really confident. A guy who doesn't care what other people think or doesn't give a fuck doesn't walk around going, I don't care what other people think. Well, because when you do that, what does it make other people think? That you actually care, or else you wouldn't be saying anything, right? Well, it's the same thing with a lot of the ways that you're going to express your qualities to a woman, is that when you have to verbally say it, it comes across try hard, and it actually has the opposite effect. So like I said, if you're telling a woman, I was talking to a client the other day, and he was like, we kind of talked about the idea that you have to have options, right? You have to have options. You have to have a lot of women in your life so that you're not focusing too much attention on one woman. And I'm explaining to this. I mean, it's like every time I'm with her, I talk about how I was out last night, or how I'm talking to this other girl, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I said to him, but when you're with her, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm talking to her, and we're just having a good time. And I go, if you see her at a party, what do you do? Oh, we gravitate and we just spend the whole time together. And my point in that was that your attention tells a woman more than your words ever will. Meaning, you could sit there and tell a woman you have options, and you have so many girls you're talking to, and you have such a big social life. But if the minute she pops up, she gets all of your attention, well, then she knows. She can see that whatever you're saying doesn't matter, right? You can be talking about the fun parties and girls that you're after and everything, but the reality is how much attention you give her demonstrates your value. Because a high value guy, his attention is harder to get and it's harder to keep. So a woman knows that if she walks into a place and the guy just is with her the whole time and he talks to her, and if she asks him to hang out, he jumps and he calls her, she knows she has all of his attention. Well, she knows he can't be too high value of a guy, because a high value guy, his attention is limited, right? Because he's got a lot of stuff going on in his life. So he's not going to get wrapped up in her so fast. So withdrawing attention from her, right? So if you see a woman out and you're talking to her, and you momentarily take your attention away from her and put it on your friends, that does way more than you standing there for 2 hours talking about how you have such a good social life and you hang out with your friends all the time. seeing it, right? That's going to create the emotional effect on her rather than you telling her. Another example is either flirting or starting a conversation with another woman, right? Because we talk about this idea of pre-selection. A woman wants to know that other women like you. She wants to also know that you're confident, that you're experienced. A lot of times, especially if you're not, women can kind of pick up on that. Like, oh, does this guy, has he dated a lot of women before? Is most of his ex-girlfriends like hermits? And like, they're kind of piecing this information together. So if you think to yourself, well, I got to let her know that I'm experienced, and you sit there and you talk and you tell her, I'm confident, I don't care what girls think. All of that comes across as like, anybody that's doing that, an example I always talk about is, I've learned this the hard way, that when I hire a contractor to come over to my house, I learned that the contractors that talk the most, I did this person's house and I've done these jobs a million times, and this is so, they're always going to do the worst because they're compensating for the fact that they actually can't back it up. The contractor that's really good, like he walks in, he looks at a few things, he measures something, he's like, yeah, I can handle this. Right? He doesn't have to like do a 20-minute thing telling you about all the other jobs he did and how smart he is, right? And it's the same thing with girls. If you're sitting there having to tell her about all the other girls in your life and how she's gonna, or your attitude, right? Oh, I'm a player, I'm a this, like making jokes about it, thinking you're getting that across. One action when you're with her, when you see her, and you don't want to do this all the time, right? It could have the opposite effect if you do this all the time. But one dose of you starting a conversation with another woman, maybe you're out at a social event with your girl and you turn to another girl at some point and you start talking to her, and your girl looks over and she sees that there's a little bit of a flirtation going on with this other girl. Now you're not going to, like I said, you don't do this all the time or else it becomes disrespectful. But if you do it once and she sees, oh, wait a minute, this guy has no problem talking to other women. He can create attraction in another woman. The other woman is into him. The message has been sent. She's seen it, right? You didn't have to tell her. She's seen it, and it's way more powerful when we see it with our own eyes than when somebody tells us it. The other thing that is an attractive quality, right, we always hear is women like dominant men who handle things, right? Masculine men. So another way to, instead of talking about this, a lot of guys, oh, I'm the kind of guy that when I'm with a girl, I take care of things. Or like all of that, again, is cheap. The way you actually demonstrate that you're the kind of guy that takes care of things and leads and is sort of masculine is you actually do that, right? You actually demonstrate it. You handle something that she can't handle on her own. An example is my girl the other day had a plumbing issue, and a plumber came over, worked on the thing, left, and the thing got even worse. And she called him up, and he was kind of giving her an issue, like, I'm not coming back. And I was like, all right, I took the phone, and I went in the other room, and I called the guy up. And an hour later, he was back, and he ripped up the check and didn't charge her any of what he initially was charging. That's handling something. That shows her that you're a guy that takes care of things. You're the guy that handles things. Talking about being the kind of guy who handles things, that's cheap. It's the same thing as telling her, I'm a confident guy or I'm a cool guy. It doesn't mean anything. She's got to see it. She's got to experience it. You have to demonstrate it in action, and that's where it has the most impact. How about this one? This is another one. Lead and seduce. So another thing that guys go through, especially when they're initially learning about dating advice, and they hear things like, you've got to bring sex into the conversation. You've got to be more sexual, and they talk about it. Okay, they say things like, "Oh man, I love sex. I can go all night." Like whatever they're doing, right? I've made this mistake. You bring it in and you try to talk all sexual, but the reality is, again, you're going to accomplish way more by just being a seductive guy. Instead of talking about sex and telling her how experienced you are, or how good in bed you are, or how all of that stuff is meaningless, as opposed to having a conversation with her and then creating that moment where like everything slows down and you're looking at her in that seductive way and maybe you touch her hand, that's going to demonstrate everything that you were thinking you were demonstrating by talking about sex and telling her about your escapades and all this other stuff. Just that, leading her, right? Being the guy. A lot of guys, this is one of the things that's kind of funny, and this happened to me a lot back in the day, so I'm not laughing about it, but I've been there, is when you start talking about sex with a girl. So there's some girls that love talking about it, and they get really into it, right? And you start talking, you have this sort of rapport, I'm going to do this. And then the moment comes where she's like expecting you to do something, but the average nice guy at that point, he chickens out and he's like, and he like hugs her and ends the night. And she's like, well, what the hell? You know, it's talk is cheap, right? It's like I always say the idea you're a sheep in wolf's clothing, right? You pretend you're this wolf, but really you're just a sheep. And eventually that comes out. Instead of being a sheep in wolf's clothing, just be the guy that instead of talking about this, lead her, take her, you know, say, hey, come with me. That demonstrates everything you're trying to demonstrate verbally or telling her stories. You know, back in the day, in the dating advice space, it used to be like, tell her stories about your exes and this and that. It's like, none of that is as important as actually making her feel seductive, you know, sexual tension around you. That's going to accomplish way more than you could have accomplished by verbally talking about these things. Same thing, you know, number 5, and I'm actually going to give you a 6, so don't stop here. Before we get into the next 2, though, one thing I want to tell you about is I have a quiz under this video. You can click it. What it is, it's about 7 questions long, and it identifies mistakes you might be making in the dating world. It asks you 7 common questions, like when you're out with a girl and this happens, how do you respond? And what it does is it formulates. It's a custom thing that formulates your personality type, and it gives you a customized profile explaining some of the mistakes that you're probably making based on how you answer those questions and how you can improve. So there's a link below. I just wanted to, before I forgot, remind you about that. The next one is like, okay, spontaneous, adventurous. All guys want to come across that way. It's just sort of a universally attractive trait, somebody who's spontaneous, adventurous. And a lot of times, we think, oh, I'm going to tell her about the time in college I took a road trip down to Mexico or this or that. And all of that is like, yeah, right? But I'll give you an example of what spontaneous demonstration is. And my friend Rob Judge, some of you know him. I've seen him do this move back in the day when we used to go out in New York City all the time. I've seen him do it hundreds of times where he'd be talking to some girl in a bar, and he'd be talking to her like 2-3 minutes, and he'd just lean in and kiss her. And she'd go, what? Like, and he'd go, oh, sorry, I just had to do that. Go on, keep talking. And and the girl would be like shocked, but she would be so intrigued because it was like nobody has ever done that to her before, right? Like some guy she just met. And eventually he'd wind up 90% of the time getting her number and leaving. That's adventurous, that's spontaneous. That one gesture accomplishes way more than anything he could have said. He could have sat there and told her all the stories about his crazy things he did over his life, or that one thing of leaning in the middle of a sentence and kissing her, that showed her that he's adventurous, he's spontaneous, he's a risk taker. Same thing with confidence. Like, confidence is displayed, like I mentioned earlier. Flirting with a woman tells her that you're confident, that you don't care, right? Saying, hey, I don't care, I'll talk to any girl, that's nowhere near as powerful as actually doing it in front of her, right? And that displays confidence, that displays boldness, that displays that you're willing to take risks. The other thing when it comes to demonstrating value, and this is sort of this is kind of an important one, and it kind of ties into this, so I'm gonna write this one up here, is breadcrumbs. Leave breadcrumbs. An example of this, because again, this is something that I think a lot of people know, and if you studied sort of my advice at least, you know that we talk about this idea that you can use something like Instagram or Facebook or one of the other dozens now sites that there are out there to your advantage. Meaning, if you want to demonstrate that you're that you have a social life or that you hang out with a lot of girls, to kind of, especially if you're in the friend zone, right? A lot of times you're in the friend zone and you want to show her like, hey, you're not the only girl in my life, right? A mistake I see a lot of guys make is they're like, hey, Bobby, I posted this picture and I look at the picture and it's them with this goofy smile with their arm around a girl. And it's like basically like the picture is essentially saying, see, look, I have other girls in my life, right? And the girl knows what you're doing. Your friend or the girl you're seeing who sees that picture, it doesn't actually demonstrate what you think it's demonstrating because it comes across as see-through. She can see through what you're doing, which makes it not work as effectively. So guys are, well, how do you do it then? And I say, well, like a better way, and this is just an example, would be if you have a picture of you and there's like a girl's arm like here, and you just see the arm in the picture, like your female friend or the girl you're after is going to be way more interested in that picture. Like, is that a female arm? He said he was out with his friends. Why is there an arm close to him? Or like a reflection off of, like, she sees like a reflection of a girl. Like those kind of things get a woman's wheels turning. Then she's piecing it together herself, right? And anytime we come to the conclusion ourselves versus somebody telling us, it's way more powerful. So think about that. You know, one time I had a client, he's like, well, how do I do this in a lockdown, right? Because we're in coronavirus lockdown. He's like, how do I do this? I go, well, I mean, listen, everybody has their comfort level of how you want to go about it. I go, but a way that you can do it is cook yourself lobster, you know, make a lobster dinner for yourself, and, you know, maybe have a video of you putting 2 lobsters in a boiling pot, and then post that video. Because what is that video gonna say to a woman who has any sense of intuition, right? She's gonna see that video and she's gonna go, oh man, he's making somebody lobster? Who's he making that lobster for, right? She's going to assume. And anytime we assume something, it's way more powerful than when somebody tells us. She's gonna come to her own conclusion. We do this all the time. Think about it, right? I hear clients doing it all the time. We examine who's that guy in the background of the picture, and oh, she's at this place, and her ex-boyfriend lives like a mile from there. Like, and we play all these games in our own head. Well, women do that even worse. So rather than tell her any of these things, or rather than be obvious with you in the picture of, you know, some girl, that's a much better way to do it. So, like I said, I want you to take a quiz that I have below, because it's going to help you pinpoint where you might be messing up. Like I said, it's going to be about it takes like 30 seconds to do, but based on the way you answer these 7 questions, it customizes your type and outlines how the way you responded to these questions actually, it says a lot about you. This thing is really accurate. It says a lot about you and the mistakes you might be making right now in the dating world. So there's a link below. It's completely free to take it. Click that link, take that 30-second quiz, and also leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this video, any insights you have about this topic, any additional ways that you can demonstrate value and attractiveness to a woman, and also, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel.